A very good afternoon to everyone. So I am B. Uday Kumar, working as an assistant professor of physics in Dr. B.R. Government College at Chella as a video recording program for today. So I'm here to deal the chapter electrostatics. So in today's class, we try to understand what is electrostatics and the basics that come in this chapter and also the important concept. So anyway, we just move on to our next slide. So this is electrostatics. So what do you see in this slide? So it has an image which consists a comb attracting small pieces of paper. So this is very much familiar to you. In your childhood days, you must have played a game you might have taken a pen or pencil or comb, and when they are rubbed with hands or your eye, those pen or pencil or comb, they attract small pieces of paper, right? So why is that so? The answer for that thing lies in this chapter. So anyway, we just move on to the topics that are present in this chapter. Anyway, let us go on to our next slide. So let us first know what is electrostatics. Our chapter is electrostatics, right? So first we try to know what is electrostatics. So it is a branch of physics which deals with the study of charges at rest. Okay, so that means in this chapter we study about the charges which are static, which are not moving. So that branch of physics we call it as electrostatics. Since this definition consists charge, the term charge, we also have to know what is a charge. So that we discuss in our next slide. So what is charge? So we try, that means the charge, electron, you must be studying many times that electron do have charge, proton do have charge. So what is that charge? So charge is the intrinsic property of a particle or body or matter, whatever you want to say, you just say it. So it's an intrinsic property. Just like mass, charge is also an intrinsic property of that particle. Anyway, moving on to our next slide, coming to the introduction part of this chapter, that is modern theory of electrification. That means, what is this modern theory of electrification? So this modern theory of electrification helps us to understand the concept of charged body. Okay, so it helps us to understand the concept of charged body. That means, when do we say that a body is charged? Why? How can we say that a body is charged? How to understand that? And if it is charged, whether it is positively charged body or negatively charged body, and if it is charged, what is the magnitude of charge that is present on a particular body? All those things can be understood with the help of this modern theory of electrification. So anyway, the main concept of this theory lies in the structure of atoms. So what this theory says is that, so in universe, everything is made of matter, right? So this matter is again made of atoms or molecules or elements, whatever you want to say, you just say it. So that means it mainly explains the concept of a charged body by taking the structure of atom, the structure of atom. So that means with the help of the atomic structure, it tries to explain the charge that is present on a body. So anyway, you know the structure of atom as you can see in this slide. So this is the structure of atom. It consists a heavy part, heavy central part, which we call it as nucleus, around which electrons will be revolving in different orbits, circular orbits, right? So anyway, you know that electrons are negatively charged particle, and the protons are positively charged particle, and neutrons have no charge, which are neutral. So, and again, you also know that the electron and the protons do have the same amount of charge. That means their magnitude is same, which is equal to 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. But their nature is opposite. That means electrons are negatively charged particles and protons are positively charged particles. So anyway, with the help of this atomic structure, how can we understand that a particular body is positively charged or negatively charged or no charge on that we try to get it. Anyway, so let us move on to our next slide. So these are, that means I already discussed whatever it is written here. So now to understand a body, whether it is charged or not, that to understand that, let us move on to our next slide. So for example, let us, in this slide, there are several atoms like hydrogen, helium, lithium, and so on. I will explain one or two images that are present in this slide. For convenience, I will take this hydrogen atom. So you know that hydrogen atom do have one proton, one neutron, and one electron. For convenience, forget about neutrons, because neutrons are, that means neutral particles, they don't have any charge. So now forget about neutrons, right? So if I consider this hydrogen atom here, so it consists one proton and one electron, and the total charge of this atom, okay, if you want to find, you have to add the charges of proton and electron. So for convenience, I will take an anode here. So for example, the charge, let us assume that the charge of this hydrogen atom is now one proton and plus one electron, right? And again, you know that the proton do have the magnitude of charge, which is taken as plus 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, and electron do have minus 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, and that means their nature is opposite. When you add those two, the total charge coming out to be zero here. Okay, similarly, even here also, the total charge of this helium atom comes out to be 2 proton and plus 2 electron. Since the magnitude of proton and electron is same, but their nature is opposite, and hence they do get cancelled and becomes again zero. So that means if you consider like that, you take any image that is present in this slide, lithium also has 3 protons and 3 electrons, and its charge becomes zero, and so on. So that means the charge on a particular atom depends on the number of electrons and number of protons that are present in it. Is that fine? So if you take any atom, in general, they are neutral. They are neutral. Why they are neutral? Because though the atom consists protons and electrons, since their number is same, the total charge is coming out to be zero, which we call it as neutral. So for example, if you take any object from by modern theory of electrification, it is made of atoms. So in general, initially, whatever may be the number of atoms that are present in an object, each atom will have same number of electrons and same number of protons, and hence the total charge of that body becomes zero. So that means whether a body is charged or not, that can be explained with the help of the number of electrons and the number of protons that are present uh, uh, in those objects. Okay. So anyway, I hope this is clear. That means if the number of electrons and number of protons are equal or same, that means automatically the charge on that body becomes zero. It becomes neutral. Okay. Anyway, I just remove whatever I have written in this slide. Okay, so now let us move on to our next slide, this one. So for convenience, let us take this example. So in this image, there is a sodium atom and there is a chlorine atom. So in sodium, let me take the marker again for convenience. Okay, so now the charge of this sodium atom initially becomes zero because it has 11 protons and 11 electrons. Since the number of electrons and protons are same, the total charge of this sodium atom becomes zero, and similarly the charge of chlorine also becomes zero because it consists equal number of protons and electrons, which is 17 protons plus 17 electrons. So now somehow, what happens if the number of electrons and protons are not same? So that becomes interesting now. So for example, here, if this sodium electron by means of something, okay, So if it loses an electron to chlorine, and if this chlorine, that means gains an electron, then the picture becomes like this. That means now the sodium will have 10 electrons and 11 protons, right? And similarly, this chlorine will have 18 electrons, but the number of protons will be 17 only. So now, since the number of electrons and protons are not same on these atoms right now, the charge of this sodium will be not zero now, and it will be something else. And since the number of protons is large here, so the charge on this sodium, now we call it as ion now. Okay, it becomes 1p, because out of 11p, 10p gets cancelled with 10 electrons. And similarly here, the charge of chlorine becomes 1e, because out of 18 electrons, 17 electrons gets cancelled with 17 protons. So now if you substitute the magnitude, I can write its value as plus 1.6 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. That means it becomes positively charged. That's why we call it as positive ion. And this chlorine becomes, here it is mentioned with negative, because it has negative charge. So since the magnitude of electron is in terms of nature also minus 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, the charge of this chlorine becomes minus 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs. So that means the charge on a particular atom is decided by the number of electrons and the number of protons. Okay. Similarly, now I'm just dealing only with simple atoms, right? So what if I take this object? Let us take an example here. Let us assume that it's an object which is made of say chlorine or anything, whatever it may be, carbon, whatever it may be. If, let us assume that it is made of some carbon. Okay, so initially it may have, you can imagine in any way, right? It can have one carbon atom, two carbon atoms, three carbon atoms, four, whatever it may be, 1,000 carbon atoms, crores of carbon atoms, whatever it may be. But in each atom, initially the number of electrons and protons will be same, and hence the total charge on this body becomes zero initially. If, okay, on applying friction or by means of something, if it loses two electrons, then what happens? In comparison with the number of electrons, the protons number will be more by 2, and hence the charge on this object will be positive, which is given by plus 2p. Okay, like that. So that means on any object, the charge is decided by the number of electrons and protons. If their number is same, the total charge is zero. If the protons number is more, the charge on that body will be positive. And how much the charge, how much are the, what is the magnitude of that charge, that also you can write here, like plus 2p, plus 3p, and so on. And if the number of electrons is larger in that object, automatically the charge on that body becomes negative. So that means modern theory of electrification, with the help of atomic structure, clearly explains whether a body is charged or not. If it is charged, whether it is positive charge or negative charge, that also it explains. If it is positive or negative, whatever it may be, the magnitude of that charge also is explained with the help of modern theory of electrification. Okay, so this is one basic concept which is very important to understand the concept of charges that exist on different bodies. Okay, so anyway, I'm just clearing all the drawings here, so I just move on to our next slide now. Okay, so what are the methods by which a body can be charged? That can be understood with the help of this slide. So there are different ways by which a body can be charged, and the first one is charging by friction. That means if you apply friction, automatically it gets charged, because it loses or gains a few electrons with the other. Okay, so for example, if you observe this image, so there is a plastic rod here, and there is a cloth here. Initially the charge on these two is zero, because the number of electrons and protons will be same in cloth. cloth and as well as in plastic rod. So once you rub these two, what happens is that depending on the system, one will lose electrons and the other will gain the electrons. So whatever may be the number of electrons one is losing, the same number of electrons will be gained by the other. So for example, here in this diagram, so let me take a marker here for convenience. Okay, okay. So now the charge that is present on this plastic rod is positive. That means it is losing electrons. And the charge that is present on this cloth is negative. That means it is gaining electrons. Whatever may be the number of electrons that it is losing, the same number of electrons is gained by this cloth. That you have to understand here. Okay. So this we call it as charging by friction. That means by rubbing with each other, you can charge the objects, charge the bodies. And the another one is charging by conduction. So this one. So charging by friction is over, and now coming to the charging by conduction. What is charging by conduction? So this is a charging of an object by contact with each other, right? For example, if you observe this diagram, there is an uncharged body, there is a charged body. Already there is a charged body here. So when they are not in contact, there is no problem. But when they are in contact, what happens is that the charge that is present on one object tries to move on to the other. Okay. Remember, only when in contact, the charge is transferred from one body to the another. So in such case, what happens again, if you that means move them apart, by that time some charge is stored on the first object here. So initially the first sphere was uncharged, but if you observe this diagram, there is some charge that is present on this object, right? So this we call it as, that means this is a case of charging of a body by contact with, by bringing in contact with a charged body. So this we call it as charging by conduction, right? And now coming to this one, this is charging by induction, which is again one method by which a body is charged. So what is charging by induction here? So charging by induction is that, so let me just drag this one here. So what is charging by induction? So you have to understand, this is a method in which a body is charged by bringing a charged body nearer to an uncharged body, but you should not that means you should not touch them. Okay, you have to bring it near to it. For example, let us assume that it's a rod which is charged and the charge that is present on is negative, and there is a sphere here initially. So if you observe carefully, the number of the amount of positive charge and the amount of negative charge is same here. So that means initially the charge that is present on this sphere will be zero. Not only initially, even after that, the total charge always remains zero. But what happens is that, so when you bring this charged body nearer to it, you should not touch it. When you bring it nearer to it, so this charge induces some charge in this sphere. Induces means, you know that the like charges repel and unlike charges attracts, right? Since the charge that is present on this rod is negative, it tries to attract the positive charge that are present in this sphere and repel the negative charge that is present within this sphere. And because of that, that means the induction of charge is created inside the sphere, which we call it as charging by induction. Induced charges do appear. Induced means initially, even after that, the total charge in that sphere remains zero. But what happens is that whenever this negatively charged rod is brought nearer to it, positive charge that is present inside the sphere tries to move towards the rod because of attractive force, and that is the negative charge that is present in the sphere tries to move away from the rod, and because of that, on one side the positive charge is created, and on the other side the negative charge is created. So this we call it as charging by induction. Okay, so this is the reason why the comb or pen or pencil do attract the small pieces of paper when they are rubbed. Okay, for example, let us assume that if there is a pen and if you just rub it, it becomes charged, right? When you bring that charged body nearer to the papers, inside the paper, the charge, that means the positive and negative charges that are present inside the paper do get separated, which we call it as induced. So because of that induction, the negative and positive, that means between negative and the positive charges, the attraction forces will be there, and hence the paper starts moving towards pen or pencil. So that you have to understand. The slide that was present at the beginning explains why the pen or pencil or comb attracts small pieces of paper. I hope the answer to the question in the first slide is given here. So anyway, now I'm just clearing all the drawings here. Let us move on to our next slide. Okay. Anyway, so here we have that means whatever I explained here, again the same slide is coming here. So if you want to, that means if you want, I just give you a small explanation here. So now let us assume that this is the comb. When you comb with the dry hair, it gets charged. So now let us assume that it consists positive charge. Let us, it depends on the system. So if you assume that if the positive charge is present on this comb, now what happens? Because of induction, on these small pieces of paper, a charge is induced in such a way that on one side, nearer to the positive side, the negative charge is induced, and the opposite side, the positive charge is induced. And because of that, so now since the attraction force is present between this plus and minus, the papers automatically attracted towards the comb and move in upward direction. So this is the reason why the comb or pen or pencil which are rubbed, or when they are applied friction, they do attract small sorry, they do attract small pieces of paper. Anyway, so I hope this is clear to you. So now let us just move on to our next slide now. So what are the properties of charges? Okay, so to understand the properties of charges, anyway, so you know that from the discussion itself, there are, that means the charges are of two types. One is positive and another one is negative. And again, again you also know that the like charges repel and the unlike charges attract. That means between positive and positive, and between negative and negative, which we call it as same charges or like charges, they do repel. So repulsion force will exist between the like charges, and similarly between positive and negative, or negative and positive, which are unlike. That means the uh, opposite natured charges do attract. Okay, so that is understood or written in the third point. And the most important concepts and properties that we have to study are quantization of charge and conservation of charge. That means the other properties of charge are charge is quantized and also charge is conserved. What is this charge is quantized and what is this charge is conserved, or quantization of charge, conservation of charge, that we try to understand in our next slides. Okay. So now this is quantization of charge. So what is this quantization of charge? Okay, sorry. I will just, okay, now let us. So any body in the nature can acquire an amount of charge which is equal to an integral multiple of electron charge, E. And mathematically we can write it as Q is equal to plus or minus Ne, where E is the magnitude of electron charge. Magnitude, that means I'm not speaking about the nature. So here E is the magnitude of electron charge, which is 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs, and N is a positive integer, that is it can be 1, 2, 3 and so on. So this we call it as quantization of charge. So that means the charge on any object will be an integral multiple of electron charge. This is the statement of quantization of charge. So and hence we say that the charge is said to be quantized in the units of E. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, statement is fine. The charge on any object is an integral multiple of electron charge, which mathematically is written as Q is equal to plus or minus Ne. Fine, everything is fine, statement is fine. But we try to understand the quantization of charge in detail. So for convenience, I have taken here. So there are four bodies here. So let us assume that it's an object. It can be any object, forget about it. It can have 100 atoms, it can have 200 atoms, it can have crores of atoms. But initially, whatever may be the number of atoms, in each and every atom, the number of electrons and protons is same, and hence the total charge on that object becomes zero. Whatever may be the number of atoms, it can be crores or lakhs, whatever it may be. Initially, the charge that is present on that object will be zero. What if, okay, it loses one electron? What if it loses one electron? That is what I mentioned here. If it loses one electron, that means the charge on that object becomes 1p. I already told you in our last slides, because the number of protons will be more by 1. If it loses one electron, if this object loses one electron, the number of protons will be more in comparison to the number of electrons by 1. Okay, so that means the charge on that body becomes 1p, where p is taken as plus 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs, right? That means the charge on this body, if it loses one electron, it becomes q is equal to plus, of course it is not mentioned here, that means you can take it granted, so which is written as, since it is losing one electron, 1 p is 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs becomes the charge on this object. Okay, now let us move on to this slide. What if it loses two electrons? If it loses two electrons, automatically the number of protons in this object will be more by 2 in comparison to the number of electrons, right? And hence the charge that is present on this object becomes q, which is equal to 2p, which I can write it as 2 into 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, and so on. Similarly, if the object loses 3 electrons, its charge becomes q is equal to 3 times 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs, and so on. And if it loses n electrons, the charge on this body becomes q is equal to n times 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs, and so on. Okay, so that means the charge on those bodies can be either 1e. So for convenience, I just take a marker here. So the charge on that body can be 1 times, if I take 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs as the magnitude of electron charge, so I can write this as 1e. Okay, and if it loses 2 electrons, the charge on it becomes 2e. 2 is here, right? 2 is multiplied with e. And similarly, if it loses 3 electrons, it becomes 3e. And if it loses 4 electrons, it becomes 4e, and so on it becomes, right? So that means the charge on a particular body can be either 1e or 2e or 3e or 4e or 5e, and so on, or n. So that means the charge on a particular body will have fixed values. Fixed values. Okay, that means there will not be any fraction here. Fixed values. The charge on a particular body can be either 1e or 2e or 3e or 4e, and so on. No fractions here. So this fixed values, that means in terms of physics we call it as quantized. Okay, that means the charge on a particular body will have fixed values, and that fixed value is denoted with the term in physics which we call it as quantized. Quantized means only fixed values of charge a body can have, and hence the charge is quantized. So this we call it as quantization of charge. And in general we can write the charge that is present on this body in mathematical form as plus or minus ne. Plus comes when it loses electrons, minus comes when it gains electrons, so that you try to get it. Okay, so I hope it is clear. So quantization of charge, that means charge is quantized. That means the charge on a particular body can have only fixed values. Either it can be 1e or 2e and 3. It cannot be 1.5 electron. Is that okay? It cannot be 1.7 electron, because a body can lose 1 electron or 2 electron. It cannot lose 1.5 or 1.6 electrons. So that means try to understand. There will not be any fraction here. Only fixed values will be there. This we call it as quantization of charge, and I hope it is clear. So now I just clear all the drawings here. So I just move on to our next slide now. So our next slide explains what is conservation of charge, which is again one quite important concept in this chapter. Okay, so what is this conservation of charge? So that we try to understand here. Anyway, I'm taking, okay. So first of all, try to understand what is the statement of the conservation of charge. The law of conservation of charge states that the total charge in an isolated system remains constant. this is simple. In simple words, this sorry, the statement of the conservation of charge. That means the total charge of an isolated system remains constant. And in other words, it also can be written as the charge can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transferred from one body to the other. So this statement also you can write, but in general, the statement of the conservation of charge is that the total charge in an isolated system remains constant. So that you have to remember. Anyway, so what is conservation of charge, that we try to understand with the help of a diagram. So there is a diagram here. So let us just divide it in two ways, right? For example, there is a rod and sphere. Initially, the charge that is present on this sphere is 0, and the charge that is present on this rod is taken as minus 4e. Minus 4e means that means it has negative charge. Okay, so that you try to get it. Anyway, for convenience, let us assume that this minus, can you see this minus? So let us assume that those minus are electrons here. Automatically, since the four minus symbols are here, and hence the charge that is present on this rod is taken as minus 4e. Okay, so this is before applying friction or any contact, whatever you want to say, you can just say it, right? So let us say friction, right? So when you apply some friction between these two, what happens? Electrons from one system to the other is transferred, right? Let us say that two electrons are transferred from a rod to the sphere, right? So two electrons are transferred here from rod to the sphere. So please check it. So since two electrons are transferred from rod to the sphere, here what happens? Initially, the total charge on this sphere was 0. That means the number of protons and electrons was same. Okay, but after friction, since two electrons are transferring from a rod to the sphere, now the sphere has two electrons more in comparison to the number of protons, and hence the charge on the sphere becomes minus 2e. And again, since it is losing two electrons, rod is losing two electrons to the sphere, right? And hence the total charge on this rod becomes minus 2e. It is simple mathematics, so try to get it. So now this is an isolated system, okay, in which we are studying the total charge of that system before applying friction and after applying friction, or before contact, before bringing them in contact, and after contact. So anyway, so this is an isolated system. Now let us try to find the total charge of the system. So now the total charge of this system is the charge of this rod plus charge of sphere, right? The charge of this rod, we can write it as minus 4e, and the charge of sphere is 0. So now the total charge of this system is coming out to be minus 4e. I hope it is clear. And after applying friction, now let us try to find the total charge of this system. So if you find it, now the charge of this rod is found to be minus 2e, and now the charge of this sphere is again found to be minus 2e. So if you add these two, again it is coming out to be minus 4e, right? So that means before applying friction and after applying friction, if you observe this slide, the total charge of this isolated system is coming out to be minus 4e only, right? So before also minus 4e the total charges, and even after also the total charge of that system is minus 4e. So this is called as conservation of charge. That means in an isolated system, the total charge of the system remains constant. So this is conservation of charge, and you take any system that you want. You take any system. This is an example. It's an image in which I have taken a rod and sphere of different charges. You take any system, isolated system, the total charge always remains constant. This is called as conservation of charge. Okay, and I hope this is clear to you. Let us move on to our next slide now. Okay, so coming to this one. Okay, so our next topic is Coulomb's law. What is Coulomb's law? This is one important concept in this chapter. Of course, you must have studied this in even in your intermediates, but these are all fundamentals which you need to be understand. That's, you may think that I'm just revising all these things. but they are very, very important for competitive examinations and also board examinations. So please check it. Anyway, what is Coulomb's law? So Coulomb's law is given by the French scientist Charles Augustin de Coulomb in the year 1785. So this Coulomb's law is given by a French scientist whose name is Charles Augustin de Coulomb in the year 1785. So what is this Coulomb's law? What does it explains? So this Coulomb's law explains the force of attraction or repulsion that exists between any two charges. So he has given this law uh, by verifying experimentally, so that you need to understand. Anyway, so to understand what is Coulomb's law, let us first try to understand this image here. So let us assume that there are two charges here, point charges, Q1 and Q2. That means I'm not considering the nature of the charges here. Uh, so it can be positive or negative, whatever it may be. So now you know that between the charges, depending on the nature, there can be an attraction force or repulsion force, right? So whatever it may be, the force is found to be directly proportional to the product of the magnitude of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them, where r is the distance between those two charges. So this mathematical equation explains the statement of Coulomb's law. So you can just check it here itself. So what is Coulomb's law? It states that the force of attraction or repulsion between any 2 point charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitude of those two charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this we call it as Coulomb's law. So that means if you observe this diagram, there are two charges Q1 and Q2. Their nature can be anything, plus and plus, or plus and minus, or minus and plus, and anything, minus and minus also. So if the distance between these two charges is r, so now the force of attraction or repulsion between those two charges is found to be directly proportional to the product of the magnitude of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And mathematically, we can write that as F is directly proportional to Q1, Q2, where it is the product directly proportional to the product of magnitude of the charges, which is mentioned in the statement that is written in mathematical form. And similarly, if the distance between these two is r, that F, that means that force of attraction or repulsion is found to be inversely proportional, right? Not directly, inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Okay, so I can write that means statement, and that means mathematically I can write the entire statement in mathematical form by these equations. So one is F is directly proportional to the product of Q1, Q2, or Q1 into Q2, and F is inversely proportional to R square, or F is directly proportional to 1 by R square. You can also say in that. So if you combine these two equations, what I get is that F is found to be directly proportional to Q1, Q2 by R square. This is the equation that I get. So now I can remove this proportionality by replacing with a constant here. Okay. So if I take that constant as k, which is proportionality constant here, so I can write that f as now this proportionality is replaced with equal to and a constant, right? So if I do that, I can write that f as k times q1 q2 by r square. So where k is found to be 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0, so that you have to, that means the value of proportionality constant is 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 here, that you need to remember it. So this epsilon 0 we call it as permittivity of free space here. Permittivity of free space or vacuum, right? So whatever it may be, you just remember the name. Okay, that means here you know that from the statement, the force between any two charges is found to be, that means it depends on the magnitude of those charges and also the distance between those charges, and also it depends on the medium in which these two charges present. Of course, that is not mentioned in the statement, but please remember it. So the force between any two charges depends on their magnitudes, the distance between them, and also the medium in which those two charges are present. Okay. So anyway, let us move on to our next slide. So here the proportionality constant, which is taken as 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0, is found to be 9 into 10 power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square, and the epsilon 0, which is permittivity of free space, is found, that means is given by the value 8.85 into 10 power minus 12 coulomb square per Newton into meter square. So please remember these values. These values are very important for your competitive examinations. Okay, and also units. So don't forget to remember the units. It's very simple. By the above equation, you can remember the values, right? For example, the units of force are Newton, and the units of charge is coulombs, and the units SI units, I am speaking SI units. The units of distance is meter. If you substitute those units in their respective places, you automatically find the units of proportionality constant and also epsilon 0 here. So please check it out. Anyway, now let us move on to our next slide, which is dielectric constant. Dielectric constant of the medium is one important topic again. So please check it out. Anyway, so you remember the diagram that we discussed in Coulomb's law. I think, I hope you remember it. So this is the system of charges in which we try to understand the force between them. Similarly, if, as I already mentioned, the force between these two charges depend also on the medium. So I hope you remember that. So if those two charges are present in free space or vacuum or air, we can write the force between those two charges as Fv, and I can write that Fp as Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon 0 r square, where epsilon 0 is permittivity of air or free space or vacuum. Okay. Similarly, if the same set of charges or if the same system is present in some other medium, the force will be different, because as I already mentioned, the force depends on the medium also. Okay. So in other medium, I can denote that force by Fm. This is Fm. So this Fm, I can write it as Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon r square, where epsilon is the permittivity of the medium. Okay, I hope you understand this one. So Fv is the force between the same set of charges in a medium, and Fm is the same set of charges or the same system in some other medium. Okay, so I can write this epsilon with epsilon. That means there are two mediums here, right? So you get one more concept, which is relative permittivity. Anyway, so that you can understand here also. Anyway, forget about this one. Just know the definitions of these two, Fv and Fm. So if you divide Fv with Fm, you get dielectric constant. So that is dielectric constant. Okay, dielectric constant of medium is defined as the ratio of the force between a system of charges in vacuum to the force between the same system of charges in some other medium. So this we call it as dielectric constant. I hope it is clear. So dielectric constant is the ratio of Fv to Fm. What is Fv and what is Fm? I explained already. So if I replace Fv with this equation, I can write it as Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon 0 r square, and I can write Fm as Q1 Q2 by 4 pi epsilon r square. Here in this equation, Q1 Q2 and r square, they are common, and hence they get cancelled. 4 pi also get cancelled, and the epsilon moves on to numerator, and this epsilon 0 moves to the denominator. So this dielectric constant comes out to be epsilon by epsilon 0. That means the dielectric constants also defined as the ratio of permittivity of medium to the permittivity of free space. So the ratio of permittivity of medium to permittivity of free space is called as relative permittivity. So I hope it is clear. So that means here, now if you come to this equation, I can write epsilon as, from this equation, epsilon 0 into epsilon r. Okay. So I hope it is clear. And epsilon r also can be written as k. So this is the equation that I get here. Anyway, so our main concept and concentration is on dielectric constant. So I can write the dielectric constant as the ratio of epsilon to epsilon 0. So definition lies in the mathematical equation itself. It is the ratio of permittivity of medium to permittivity of free space. So this is dielectric constant. So please check it out. For air medium, the dielectric constant is 1. Okay, so that you try to remember. Okay, so now let us move on to the next slide. Our next slide explains charge distribution. So what is charge distribution? So that means whenever you give some charge to a particular body, it is distributed in different ways. So it can distribute along its length, it can distribute along its area, and it can distribute along its volume, and so on. So depending on the different kinds of distribution, we study those distributions with three different terms, which we call it as lambda, sigma, and rho. So lambda is called as linear charge density, sigma is called as surface charge density, and rho is called as volume charge density. So lambda comes in case where the charge is distributed along its length. For example, if I take this phone, so it has particular length, right? For example, if I give some charge to it, the entire charge will be distributed along its length. Okay, so this we call it as linear charge distribution. And if it is distributed, that means along its surface area, then we call it as surface charge distribution. And if the charge is distributed uh, inside it also, that means along its volume, among its volume, then we call it as volume charge distribution. In different cases, we study those charge distributions with the different quantities. They are lambda, sigma, and rho here. So lambda comes in case of linear charge distribution, and that is called as linear charge density. And sigma is called as surface charge density, and rho is called as volume charge density. And what are they? Those things. That means their derivations, their definitions are equations that are understood in our next topic. And remember, these are the things which are very, very important, though they are basic. Okay, these are the quantities that that means you come across in the derivation parts, and hence I request everyone to understand these three mainly. These three play an important role in our coming derivations. Okay, so now let us move on to our next slide. So this is linear charge density. What is this linear charge density? For example, let us assume that there is a pen whose length is capital N. Okay, let us say if you give capital Q amount of charge to that object whose length is capital N, now the lambda, which we call it as linear charge, which we call it as linear charge density, and it is defined as the charge per unit length of the system. Charge per unit length is called as linear charge density. So please, I hope you understand it. So for example, if in this diagram you just observe this one, there is a line here. There is a line here. It will have particular length, right? Let the total length of this line is capital N, and if the total charge that is given to that object is capital Q. Now, to find the charge per unit length, what you have to do is that you have to divide the total charge with total length. That's all. This gives you the total charge per unit length. So that means I can define lambda as, that means mathematically, I can write lambda as total charge given to that object by total length. Is that clear? This is lambda, which is mathematically written, and its definition is charge per unit length. And if I consider any element in that, any element, so for example, if I consider this element here, which is denoted with arrow marks. So let us assume that this length element is taken as dl or dx. Choice is yours. Choice is yours, right? If this element is taken as dx or dl, the charge that is present on this element is denoted by dq. Okay. So lambda is again written as the ratio of dq to dx or dq to dl. That means with respect to the total length, you can define lambda. With respect to a small interval, okay, small length element also you can define lambda. So that you try to get it. So if you divide the total charge with the total length, that also gives you the charge per unit length. And if you divide, if you take a length element, and if you divide the charge that is present on the length element with the length element itself, that also gives you the charge per unit length. So that you try to understand. So these are the mathematical equations which are very important for our next topics in derivation parts. Okay, so please remember these equations and also try to understand its statement or definition. Now let us move on to our next one, which is surface charge density. What is this surface charge density? As you know, if you understand the linear charge density, you also will understand the surface charge density. It is denoted by sigma. Please remember, it is denoted by sigma. So this surface charge density is defined as the charge per unit area. The charge per unit area. As I explained the last slide in terms of length, now this comes, and this can be understood with the help of with the concept of area. So now let us assume that there is an object here whose area is capital A. Okay, if the total charge that is given to this entire area is Q, you just divide the total charge with total area. That becomes sigma, which we call it as charge per unit area. And this sigma also written in terms of area elements. For example, if I choose any element in this region, any element, and those areas are same here, please check it. I have drawn in such a way. Need not be. Those areas need not be same here, these area elements, but here in this image I have drawn in same. Okay. Uh, so for example, if I consider this element, its area is dA, and let us assume that the charge that is present on this area is dq. So if you divide that dq with dA, you get sigma, which is charge per unit area. Okay, so this is surface charge density. I hope it is clear to you. Now let us move on to our next slide, that is volume charge density. So this is volume charge density. That means the charge is distributed along the entire volume. That means inside the volume also, inside an object also charge is present. So now what is volume charge density? Again, if you understand linear charge density, surface charge density, it becomes very easy to you. This is the charge per unit volume. So that means now let us assume that this is the image that I have taken. So let the total charge that is given to this volume or object is capital Q, and let its total volume is V. You just divide the total charge with total V. Okay, this becomes volume charge density, which is defined in physical terms, which is defined as the charge per unit volume. And to find this rho, you need not take the entire object. You can even take the small volume element that exists within the object itself, right? So that is shown here. So this is the small element that we are considering. If its volume is dV, and if the charge that is present in that element is dq, rho I can write it as the ratio of dq to d. So that you try to understand. This is volume charge density. Okay, so now let us just move on to our next slide, that is electric field. So what is electric field? So it's one important concept that you need to understand. So electric field is the space around a charge in which it experiences some force on the other page, other charge. Sorry. So that means what is electric field? It is the space around a charge in which it experiences some force on the other, right? It's quite simple. For example, we do live, that means in such a way that we always build some compounds, right, around our houses or homes, individual homes, right? So within that compound, if someone enters, do we keep quiet? No, right? So that means I'm just comparing the human world with the world of electric charges. Okay, if someone enters our area, we will not keep quiet, right? We try to oppose them. Okay, we try to that means apply some force on them. We will not allow them to enter our region. Similarly, that region we call in term that means in terms of charges as electric field. So the electric field is the space around the charges. So that means there will be some space around the charge in which, if someone enters that charge, if someone means some other charge, if some other charge enters that region, it experiences some force. So that space around that charge we call it as electric field. Okay, okay, so that I hope it is clear to you. It can be that that force can be either attraction force or repulsion force, whatever it may be. The space around the charge in which it experiences some force on the other is called as electric field. So for example, if this is a positive charge, it will have some electric field here around it. If some other charge enters it, it will not, that means keep quiet. It experiences some force. For example, I take an example here. So for example, this is the field, it is positive charge, right? If some other charge enters this region, say some Q1 or Q2 or Q0, whatever it may be. Now, if it is positive, it tries to repel. If it is negative, it tries to attack. Whatever it may be, it experiences some force. So that you try to get it. Similarly, if the same Q0 enters this electric field of negative charge, there will be some attraction force. So this is the space around the charges in which these charges experiences some force on the other when they enter. So those spaces are called as electric fields. Anyway, I just erased this one, and let us move on to our next slide. So the electric field for positive and negative charges are taken. You have seen here, right? Similarly, for different set of systems, the electric field will be different, right? For example, here an electric dipole is present. That means, but electric dipole when comes, I just explained. So the positive and negative charges are separated by a small distance whose magnitude is same here. So this we call it as electric dipole. And of this system, the electric field will be like this. So that means in this space, if you keep some charge, it experiences some force by the set of charges. And similarly, the electric field of two positive charges are shown here. And similarly, the electric field that exists between two plates of capacitor are shown here, right? Okay, next slide, which is electric flux. Okay, so what is electric flux? What is Gauss theorem? These two are very, very, very important topics in this chapter. Those things we discuss in our next class. Okay, and thank you once again.